It was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. 64 episodes in, and we dodged the breaking news bullet when recording for this podcast. And yesterday, it wasn't even like 4 minutes, but between the time that we finished and Devin texted me, and I thought you were messing with me at first, man. I really did think you were messing with me, especially when it said Quinn Hughes to Minnesota.
Who saw that coming, right?
Right? I mean, it felt like that, when Seinfeld says Newman, felt like that with Minnesota again, from 2012 when the Parisi Suter thing went down.
Gary.
So they got us, man. They got us. So if you see my wife in the background today cleaning up around the house, that's because I had the room reserved yesterday. So now I just have to pay the prices. So you can thank Jim Rutherford for that. Out of the blue, nowhere. Did not see that coming.
It's wild, man.
Welcome to the Flying Octopus Podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabourin.
Hey, it's Carter Bear, and you're listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast.
Welcome to episode 64 of the Flying Octopus Podcast. I am your host, Evan Sabourin, joined as always by my co-host, Devin Little. This is actually the second version of episode 64. We did, as we said in the open, we did record yesterday, and as soon as I hit that export button on the Riverside recording app here, I get a text from Devin and saying, "Oh man, everything we just did for the past hour is pretty much useless." So we're back at it again today. The Quinn Hughes breaking news finally happened. Did not see that one coming the way that one played out. Minnesota, Devin, did you have that one on your radar?
I sure didn't. But then now that, we have some hours and a night behind us to kind of think about it. And I mean, obviously, the deal did happen, but Minnesota was a team that definitely had the assets to make this happen. They've done a really good job of accumulating young assets over the last few years. So maybe they should have been on more people's radars than they were. They weren't on mine. I know as soon as we logged off and I pulled up the old Twitter and that was the first thing I saw was Quinn Hughes has been traded to Minnesota. I had to check a bunch of different accounts to see if I was getting pumped because what? But yeah, crazy stuff. I guess if there's any consolation for the Red Wings and their fans, it's that Quinn Hughes is staying in the West. He's not moving to an Eastern Conference team that they would have to compete with for a playoff spot. But yeah, crazy kind of out of the blue, but heck of a haul for Vancouver. What did Evan? I'm curious. What'd you think of the return on that deal?
I mean, that's a lot. And I just looked and saw Pierre LeBrun tweeted out to confirm the 6 teams that were in on Quinn Hughes, and that was New Jersey, Detroit, the Rangers, Carolina, and Buffalo. Obviously, Minnesota's the 6th team that got them. I tweeted out what my comparable was, and first off, let's go over the deal. The Minnesota Wild acquired Quinn Hughes for the services of Zeev Buium, Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, and a 2026 first. So my comparison for that trade at the time, and some people weren't agreeing with this, some people were agreeing with this. My comparable trade offer was ASP, Casper, MBN, and the 2026 first. I know a lot of people think the deal breaker, I mean, hypothetically, we're never going to know. We're never going to know what the deal breaker was. A lot of people think it's Edmondson. And I think I have to, that probably does it. Now, from the trade offer that I just proposed, ASP, our top defensive prospect, that's Zeev Buium for Minnesota. Casper, Marco Rossi, we're hoping Casper kind of develops into what Marco Rossi has become. But, Marco Rossi is kind of an undersized center. I would take Casper's ceiling over him at this point. And then MBN and Ogren. I mean, there hasn't been a big enough sample size of MBN in the NHL, and same with Ogren. He's still young, but hasn't really produced the points that they were expecting him to, and a 2026 first. So I think that offer is comparable. I got to think Edmondson might have been the holdup. What do you think?
I agree, and I've seen very much similar offers to what, or similar, projected what the offer could have been to what you laid out there. I've seen it be Edvinson instead of ASP. I've seen it be Finney instead of MBN, which would obviously disrupt the lineup even more. But I am in the camp of, I think it was Edvinson. I think that was kind of the holdup with the Red Wings. The thing that's kind of huge here and kind of jumps out at you, Quinn Hughes is a left-handed defenseman, so is Bouillon. They're both left-handed defensemen. The haul that Vancouver got, obviously a lot of young talent, it allows them to kind of at least hope for a quick turnaround. It's not entirely futures-based to where they're not going to be competitive for 2 or 3 years. Theoretically, if things gel, they could turn it around, if not this year, then next year, especially if Bouillon and Rossi, find another level. But if I'm Vancouver, I am asking for Edvinson, because then, you are just basically swapping Hughes for Edvinson. And then you can kind of maintain what you have on the blue line and build out from there. But for me, if that is the case, and like you said, Evan, we'll never really truly know if it was or wasn't. But I don't. If it was Edvinson, I don't blame Yzerman for hesitating, because I know we've talked extensively on the show about whether or not it's worth it to upgrade ASP into Quinn Hughes. I think it's even less worth it to upgrade Edvinson to Quinn Hughes. I think Edvinson and Seider, statistically speaking, and eye test speaking, have been one of the best top pairings in NHL this season. That's not what you need to upgrade. That's not where you need that upgrade. So to invest all those assets into upgrading Edvinson, I'm not saying Edvinson is as good of a player or just slightly not as good as Quinn Hughes. I'm just saying that the difference that you would see in the lineup in removing Edvinson and swapping in Quinn Hughes, as well as, you're losing Marco Casper and then you're losing your top call up in NBN and blah, blah, blah. I just don't know that it's worth it. And we'll see what this does for the Wild. I think they're going to be a real interesting team to kind of track for the next year and a half at least while Quinn Hughes is still on his current contract, because they're in a tough division. I'd say the Minnesota Wild are kind of in a very similar boat at the Red Wings. Maybe they're like one step ahead of Detroit in terms of where they are in their window, but they needed to make a big move too, just like the Red Wings need to. They made their big move, but they are also in a very competitive division. They're probably in the most competitive division in the West, that Central Division. They got to compete with the Dallas Stars. They got to compete with the Colorado Avalanche. I don't know that this trade puts them in that conversation. And for the assets that they gave up to do it, they need better hope that they are on that level now, or at least they can compete for at least the next 2 seasons, because the other big part of this deal that we haven't mentioned yet is that there was no guarantee that Quinn Hughes is going to sign an extension with the Minnesota Wild. In fact, when Jim Rutherford was talking about it with the Vancouver media, he reiterated that Quinn Hughes and his representation want to eventually see Quinn play with his brothers. And so unless Jack and Luke eventually plan to go to Minnesota, that path to New Jersey is still there. If I'm Steve Yzerman, I have to give up Edvinson, I have to give up Casper, I have to give up a first-round pick, and I have to give up MBN or Emmett Finney, and I don't even know that Quinn Hughes is going to resign. It's not worth it, man. At least not to me.
No, that could set your organization back big time. Yeah, that's the biggest thing that reported, and that was obviously my next thought that you obviously stole from me. But yeah, you can't give up those assets for no guarantee from Quinn Hughes. Those are premium assets. And hey, I mean, Billy Guerin looks like he's a gambling man. He pulled his Dan Campbell ball out there. And if that doesn't, that could come back to haunt them. It really could, because I don't know you can trade that for no guarantee. It's just it's wild to me. I know, don't give me that. I see what you did there, but yeah, I don't. If Evanson was the holdup, then I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it not happening. It's I think the Red Wings are, like I said, we've said 1,000 times, I think they're in a good place right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're getting better. The Wild are 2 points ahead of the Red Wings, by the way, in the standings. They have 39 points, 37. But yeah, it did make me think of the Ryan Suter, Zach Parise thing.
Oh yeah,
Minnesota.
It's always Minnesota that somehow undercuts the Red Wings, right? I am curious, Evan. What we've had a little time to digest it. How do you feel about the Wild in terms of their standing in the Western Conference now that they've made this deal? Do you see them as like a completely different caliber of team now?
Well, I think you have to. I mean, you add a talent like that. They do have some talent on that team, and maybe they want to ride the Jesper Wallstedt wave all the way to the conference finals. And who doesn't want to see the Colorado Avalanche and the Minnesota Wild go at it? Cale Makar versus Quinn Hughes could be a really exciting playoff matchup.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. You got Matt Boldy, Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek. You take out Rossi, you still have Brock Faber. Yeah, I mean, but dude, the West is going to be a battle, and Colorado looks top notch this year. I don't know, but you got to applaud Bill Guerin for giving it a try. People are going to come after Yzerman now in the comments, which you've already seen already. I think a lot of people are starting to come to their senses when they realize what that haul was.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, what you just talked about, Simon Edvinsson was a no-go, I think, from the beginning. I think he's one of the 4 untouchables on this team, along with Raymond, Sider, and Larkin. But yeah, that one caught me off guard. It really caught me off guard. I love that they do it on a Friday night, right?
Right.
Deflect attention. But yeah, I can't picture Quinn Hughes in a Minnesota Wild jersey yet. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this works out for them. What was is your comparable offer the same as mine?
Yeah, I basically swap ASP for Edvinsson just because I think that's what they were going for. But other than that, yeah, pretty much the exact same.
I was talking to Travis last night from Hockey Town West podcast, and he was going into the fact that he thinks that Z William is a way better prospect than Axel Sandin Pellikka. Do you believe that?
I think you can make an argument for sure. I think that they're roughly comparable. It's a little tricky because, ever since he became a Red Wings prospect, I've been really keeping a close eye on Axel Sandin Pellikka, and, he's been the top prospect in their pool for the last couple of years when I've been doing prospect break-ins. So I've really developed a high impression, for lack of better words, of Axel Sandin Pellikka. I really do think he's going to be a really, really good defender. But I also know that Williams is going to be a really good one. I guess we'll find out, right? And I guess maybe the other thing that's unspoken here is that the Red Wings don't need Sandin Pellikka to be as good as Williams because they have Edvinsson and they have Sider, at least right now, on that top line, whereas that the Canucks are acquiring Williams to effectively replace Quinn Hughes as their top defenseman at some point in the future. But you could definitely make that argument. I'm not going to dispute it. But I don't know that it's like, I don't know that Williams leaps and bounds ahead of Sandin Pellikka. Sandin Pellikka, I said it, before the season started. I'll say it again now. Sandin Pellikka is 20 years old. He has the ability, or he has the potential to be something special.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I think we've seen glimpses of it early on. The hockey sense there, his awareness there, I think he does have the chance to be something special. And it's one of those guys where you're like, oh, I don't want to, 3 years down the road and you see this guy just taking off. That one hurts,
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like, this might outage everyone, but when Adam Oates was traded, Red Wings way back in the day, almost hard to see how he blossomed in the NHL. And Red Wings got stuck with Bernie Federico and Tony McKegney. And that didn't really pan out as well.
I was trying to think of a good comparable. I think that one's a really good one, honestly.
Yeah. Well, the fact remains, it wouldn't hurt the Red Wings to, still look at fixing their second pairing, third pairing. What other options are out there? Like we talked about Pavel Mintyukov a few weeks ago. I'm still curious about him, although he's been back in the lineup and playing well with the Ducks. You see Rasmus Anderson. That's a right shot. What other options are out there? I know there's a guy in Ohio who's pretty good friends with Larkin, plays for Columbus.
Yeah. And I guess before I dive into this, the fact that the Red Wings were one of those 6 teams in on Quinn Hughes tells me, and should tell everyone, that Yzerman does recognize that it's time to make a push. It's time to make a move to give them the best shot they can to make the playoffs. Obviously, there is there's a limit on how much you give up. But it's encouraging to me that he was in the mix. It would have been really disappointing if he wasn't in the mix at all. Now, having said that, yeah, what options are available? No one like Quinn Hughes is going to be available. That's why the prevailing sentiment about Quinn Hughes was that the Red Wings had to get in on that because players like that just never become available. Having said that, though, there should be options that will significantly improve the Red Wings blue line while also not punching a bunch of holes elsewhere to get that improvement. You obviously are alluding to Zach Werenski over in Columbus. Columbus is a really interesting team right now because they technically are they're a new age above 500. They're 13, 12, and 6. So they have more regulation wins than they have regulation losses, but they're still, they're not on a good trajectory. I think while they're still banking points, I don't think Werenski's up for grabs, and I don't even know if he'll be up for grabs if they start to really head south, but that connection's always going to be there. They always talk about how he was roommates with Larkin whenever they play. the joke at this point. If that possibility is there, I fully expect the Red Wings to inspect that. I think Werenski would be a really good fit with this team. Honestly, maybe even more of a better fit than Quinn Hughes, but I won't go into all that. I think the Buffalo Sabres are also going to be a team to watch. A little trickier because they're in division. Sabres aren't going to want to send a really top-notch guy to a division rival that they're theoretically competing with for playoff positioning. But they have a couple of guys I know I have my eyes on. Rasmus Dahlin, I'll always have time for that. That would be about the Quinn Hughes equivalent in terms of having to give up a boatload for a significant improvement. But man, if Rasmus Dahlin becomes available, I am very much expecting the Ravens to be in on that. That takes me back to the 2018 draft when the hope was that the Red Wings would luck into the top pick so they could pick that guy and he could be their next great Swedish defenseman after Nick Lindstrom. And then also Matthias Samuelsson is another Sabre I have my eye on. Not just because he's a former Western Michigan Bronco, but because he's had a really solid year with the Buffalo Sabres this year. I think he's the type of guy you can go get. You don't have to sell the farm to go get. He's signed to a really reasonable, solid contract. And I think you can help fill out and complete the top four. You can put him next to Seider. You could put him next to Axel Sani-Pellikka. And I think you've theoretically completed your top four. And like I said, you don't have to sell all your best prospects to make that happen. And then just to kind of round this out, it probably makes sense to look out west. Teams in the East, and we've talked about this. Everyone's kind of bunched together in the East right now. I don't know that anyone's really trying to help each other out right now. So looking west, I have my eyes on the Nashville Predators. I have a really significant name in mind there, but it would take a big time collapse in Nashville for that player to become available. But if that player becomes available, I guess I'll stop beating around the bush with Roman Josi. If Nashville wants to commit to like a full blown rebuild, which I think they might have to, Roman Josi is going to be one of their pieces that nets them the pieces they need for a rebuild. And if it comes to that, that's a guy the Red Wings should be in on. And then I guess last but not least, Rasmus Andersson is definitely somebody they should consider. You did mention he's a right-handed shot, so it's a little different than acquiring anybody else I've mentioned so far, but the Flames are at least expected to be one of those teams that's going to be selling as we get closer to the trade deadline. So it makes sense to at least kind of keep tabs on them and see, even if it's not Andersson, who else on that roster might make sense as a trade deadline addition. Yeah, I guess overall to kind of summarize my point here, Quinn Hughes wasn't their only shot at improving the blue line. There will be other opportunities. Some of those opportunities are going to be more significant than others for sure, but I still firmly believe the Red Wings have the possibility and have the potential and the assets for that matter to make a significant improvement, the significant improvement that they need without incurring the costs that the Minnesota Wild gave up to, or the cost that they had to endure to bring in Quinn Hughes.
I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. And who are we as Red Wings fans if we're not making more hypothetical trades after one of the bigger letdowns in trade history? I couldn't see mortgaging the future. And if I really want to know, but we'll probably never find out if Ed was a sticking point, like we said. I think that's one of those ones that you can say, yeah, that's one of those ones you can say that's, yeah, without really, really knowing about what happened. But I think that's the smart play. And Red Wings fans will be mad and tell us you don't know puck and all that great stuff that people like to insult on Twitter. But I think the Red Wings made the right play here. And in a couple of years, we'll all look back, and that's why you got to write it down now. Mm-hmm. Tweet it out now, so 2 years from now you can say I was right. Like I still hold my Pavel Datsyuk. The Red Wings should have drafted Chychrun and not I save that
Cholowski.
Tweet and I bring that up every couple of years. And now Chychrun's literally ESPN has him as like a Norris Trophy finalist. Not that he'll win, but still that would have been a great. And he's a left shot too.
You'd have your top four now, wouldn't you?
Well, Dennis Cholowski. I'll never forget that one. So that's going to do it for episode 64. Wings cap off this 6-game road stand in Chicago against Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks on Saturday before returning home to the LCA to face the Islanders on Tuesday and the Mammoth on Wednesday. We'll be back next Friday morning with the latest edition of the Flying Octopus Podcast. Quick reminder where you can find us. Give us a follow on Twitter at Flying Octopod and check us out on YouTube at The Flying Octopod. You can also listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Devin, the holidays are here, man. That's getting pretty excited. But until then, man, good to see you, brother. We'll do this again next week. Thanks for listening to episode 64. We'll see you on the flip side.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.